Good morning, everyone. I want to welcome you to the Are you ready, gentlemen? I know it. Welcome you to the Tuesday, August 28, 2018 Board of Supervisors meeting. We will begin with a flag salute led by County Executive Officer Todd Leopold. We'll now move to our consent agenda. All items on the consent agenda have been recommended for approval by the County Executive Department. All items will be approved by a single roll call vote. Anyone may ask to address consent items prior to the board taking action, and the item may be moved for discussion. Is there anyone, any board members have a consent item they want pulled? No? Anybody in the audience? I'd like to pull item 17A and not necessarily discuss today, but I need more information, so I'd like to have a meeting with staff about that item. Any objection? All righty. Then I'll ask for approval of all items minus 17A. It's moved and seconded to approve consent items. Is this a roll call vote? Roll call vote, please.
Duran. Yes. Wygant. Yes. Euler. Holmes.
Yes, thank you. Oh, incidentally, Supervisor Montgomery won't be with us today because she's attending to a family matter. This is the time for public comment. Persons may address the board on items not on this agenda. Please limit comments to 3 minutes per person, since the time allotted for public comment is 15 minutes. If all comments cannot be heard within the 15-minute time limit, the public comment period will be taken up at the end of the regular session. The board is not permitted to take action on any items addressed under public comment. Good morning.
Good morning. Bradley Cutler for Granite Bay. In response to our repeated requests to recalculate the open space requirements, Supervisor Euler was kind enough to share the results that demonstrate the requirement mandating open space in the Tree Lake subdivision in California state law has been flagrantly violated. The county, in a response from Mr. Vivaldi, provided a few statements of fact to justify these violations, but these statements need to undergo investigation and vetting to determine their relevance and accuracy in order for them to become valid arguments. Based on the evidence regarding the statement of fact, that Tree Lake Mini Storage does not need to adhere to the county's 12.5% open space, much less the subdivision's requirement of 14.99% open space per the Planning Commissioner Yeager's memo, but they have not been supported. While Mr. Rosasco has stated that Mr. Moss is not under obligation to uphold his planned development agreement of 14.99% open space, the county has failed to provide the specific ordinance allowing Commissioner Moss to bypass the requirement, the specific administrative documents allowing Commissioner Moss to bypass this requirement, nor has he provided the specific documentation from the hearing allowing Commissioner Moss to bypass the requirement, and most importantly, the specific administrative hearing and or authority that grants the Board of Supervisors the right to allow a project not in land use compliance to continue to operate illegally. Documents to date, such as the Placer County Open Space Requirements, zoning ordinance, and California laws guaranteeing uniform land use throughout our zoning district, are evidence that the Planning Commissioner Moss is being allowed to continue to operate not in land use compliance through complicity, vicarious liability, and influence peddling. This board's oath of obligation is to uphold the zoning laws, and once more, we ask that you fulfill your duty to represent our laws, not the financial interests of one individual. We remain committed to open, honest, and transparent government and would appreciate it if you did so too.
Morning. You have a handout. Scott Vaughn, 5225 Parkford Circle, Granite Bay.
This is our 15th time, as you well know. And what I wanted to do is just remind, actually, Todd, we were here before you, so sorry, nothing personal. I wanted to remind you of a commitment on our very first time we came here, when the county was producing on January 9th, abandonment for a trail. And Mr. Euler, we pulled it off consent, and then you asked staff to come back with specifically what was a requirement, what was the requirement to build the trail, and why wasn't it done, or who was supposed to pay for it. It's been almost 8 months now, and it hasn't come back. County staff hasn't brought it back, and we're not sure why. I pretty much know why. We gave you the conditions of approval. You have them here again, and I know Supervisor Duran and Montgomery also voiced concern that they would like to see a complete package and a complete discussion of this trail. The taxpayers should not pay the $250,000 that is the estimate to build this quarter-mile trail when it was a condition of approval and a requirement of the developer, who is now a planning commissioner in this district. You have the conditions of approval. You have all the information. We await it to be on an agenda so that we can have a discussion, so that we don't get burdened, the taxpayers, with 100, 200, whatever it's going to cost, and we have to redo the park and all those sorts of things. So I'm just asking you to live up to your commitment. And so I've listed the reasons here. I've listed the original announcement you have that talked about it and talked about the easement abandonment. And we're just waiting. So, Mr. Euler, I call on you to talk to county staff to add this to the agenda for the next meeting or sometime in September so that we can have a public discussion. Our neighbors will be here. We can all sit down and see, was it a requirement or was not a requirement, and who's supposed to build it. Because right now there's a huge berm of dirt that just fills the area, blocking, there's no landscaping or anything like that. So we would like you to uphold what was approved by the board for the approval of the Tree Lake Terrace development in 1999.
Good morning, Delana.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank you for this opportunity that you provide the public to speak. My name is Delana Rude. I reside at 10800 Kramer Road. I'm here to say a few words about the proposed purchase of the 50-acre Twilight Ride properties located at 5345 Bell Road. Even though this property entrance is just across Bell Road from my family's ranch, I do not consider this a NIMBY, or not in my backyard, issue. This is a problem for every property taxpayer in Placer County because all are paying for this property and supporting the upkeep of Hidden Falls Park. And if the purchase goes forward, will pay forever, even if they never set foot on any of the property or trails. My question at this point is, since a very high percentage of Hidden Falls Park users seem not to be Placer County residents, why am I paying for their use, and why are they not being charged a fee? I want to thank you, Jim, and in absence, Jennifer, for doing the ride around on Bell, Kramer, and Lone Star roads and viewing the property not visible from the county road with my brother Barton and some of my neighbors. And I hope the rest of the board members will have the opportunity to do the same and not too far down the road. From what I heard, it should have been an eye-opening experience for you, particularly because of the expertise imparted by Kurt and Bart about Big Hill and the extreme fire danger that it has. The impact of this proposed site development as a backdoor entrance to Hidden Falls Park has many facets. The fiscal impact is huge, has many facets, and will increase over time. In addition, I think the use of Placer Legacy Funds and the Oak Preservation Funds for the purchase of the property are possibly illegal. My family has been donating to the Placer Legacy Fund probably since its inception, and never did we think our donation would be paying for parking lots for 100 cars and 40 horse trailer rigs. There are many other impacts to be considered. The intrusion on our relatively quiet neighborhood from hundreds of cars and vehicles pulling horse trailers, especially on weekends and holidays, 365 days a year, from dawn to dusk, on narrow roads most will be totally unfamiliar with. 2 summers ago, I was forced into the ditch on Kramer Road just above the NID reservoir by a guy driving down the middle of the road. I was already hugging the edge of the road, as I always do, going around those wonderful blind curves, and had no choice. The guy missed me by about 6 inches. I only blew a tire, but I felt very lucky I wasn't hit. Last summer, Bart was almost hit by a Cal Fire truck on the same curve. Imagine that, Cal Fire, they're supposed to be good drivers. A kid on a motorcycle wasn't so lucky, but he only got away with a broken leg. There are many other concerns about this location, including added noise and pollution from the increased traffic, the probability of trespassers, theft, vandalism, intrusion by the homeless. We had a homeless guy camping on the backside of the ranch on Ore Creek last summer. Wonderful. They are there. They will keep coming. This is a rural area, and those who reside in urban areas have little understanding of what rural really means. Most will never experience the joy and solitude that I've had over most of my life, but they will never also have cringed over losing a calf or had baby lambs torn up by dogs, nor watched everyday prices and taxes go up while farm income remains stagnant. It's no wonder that most farmers have someone in the family working off the farm. Probably the thing that we fear most about this probable buildup or possible buildup is fire, and particularly fire on Big Hill. And I think, Jim, you saw a good piece of that. Thus, I encourage you not to go through with this purchase. We are not opposed to recreation, but this property to be used as access to Hidden Falls is in the wrong place. Plus, its access to Placer Land Trust opens up whole other problems not to be considered at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Delana. Good morning, Ms. Hart.
Good morning, Board. Pam Hart. I reside right off of Bell Road on Blue Heron Court, and I would also like to talk about the Twilight Ride property today. Yesterday, I was very fortunate to participate in the fire watch up at Wolf Mountain, and it really brought home the fact that there's so much vegetation, so much dry vegetation, so much rural, inaccessible vegetation. And it really brings home the fact that that whole area that the Placer Legacy is buying all the way from Hidden Falls to the Bear River is totally in that zone. It also brought home to me the fact that we do not have enough fire trucks, enough fire personnel, enough firefighting equipment to handle these things, especially during this season when we learned of how many other fire departments only have one fire truck that they're borrowing on staff right now because of helping out the other areas in California with fire situations. So when you're drawing down the resources to less than zero in your own county to help other counties, it just leaves this whole big void that brings home the fact that we do not have enough fire protection. And if the county is looking to spend millions, and I do mean millions and millions of dollars on this Twilight Ride property and the road improvements that would be necessary for access to it, I ask them to please look at their budget again and think about fire protection. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, Veronica.
Good morning. I'm here to talk about affordable housing.
Wow.
This is Veronica Blake, CEO at Placer Community Foundation. First, I just want to thank the Board of Supervisors for agreeing to replace the affordable units known as Bell Gardens in the DeWitt Center. We appreciate the effort that you and the county staff have made today, but we're also asking you to stretch a little bit more. In late September, we know you plan to take up the issue of inclusionary housing and whether or not you will continue to accept the fees in lieu of construction on the affordable units. Business as usual is not working. Affordable units are rarely being built, and the Housing Trust Fund has maybe only enough money banked to build maybe 3 units. Before you take this issue up in September, I want to encourage you to look at models where affordable housing is actually constructed and fees are rarely accepted. One great example is right here nearby in the city of Roseville. I know their housing manager would be happy to share her insights. Roseville has constructed over 3,000 affordable units, and their methods really need to be carefully considered. We desperately need you to work with the development community to find solutions to build affordable homes. Your recent Beacon Economics study shows that much of our future job growth is in construction, healthcare, and consumer-facing industries. And given the projections for lower wage job growth, it is absolutely critical that we plan for housing for all of our residents. Many of us are concerned about this issue, and while we appreciate all the work that's been done so far, we want to point out that we didn't see any money set aside for affordable housing development in the current budget. Resources need to be aligned if we're going to be successful. So thanks for your continued work on this issue, and we look forward to working alongside of you to ensure that there are housing types available to all the residents of our community.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning, board members. My name's Lori Lewis. I live at Wise and Gold Hill. I'm here this morning in regards to the Gold Hill Gardens Event Center. I'd like to refresh your memory that in 2010, Mike Carson applied for an event center, and he was denied all the way through the county until it came to the Board of Supervisors. At that point, it was a 3-2 vote. Mr. Holmes, Mr. Duran, and Mr. Euler allowed for Mr. Carson to do an event center in an residential ag-zoned area. In his proposal, he was supposed to build, he may build, a 6,000 square foot event center. 8 years later, it's not there. I'd like you to listen to what I've listened to for the last 8 years with no code enforcement, no activity. So please be with me. Take me a minute.
All right.
Because I want you to see what you guys approved. Come on. Hear the yelling? Then they start yelling, then the dogs start barking. I have dozen copies of complaints that I have filed with code enforcement. Not once has anyone come out, except for last week, because they were out on another issue, did they realize there was a problem. And this is what you guys put in my neighborhood. I don't think your constituents would have allowed it. You guys thought it was a great idea. I am sorry, I'm so upset.
That's all right.
I've been dealing with this for 8 years and I've gotten no remedy. But I wanted you guys to be aware of what you approved and what I'm stuck with. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Fickle.
Morning, Supervisors. I have absolutely no complaints. My name is Joe Fecco. I am running for the Auburn Recreation District Board. I worked for the district as the Chief Financial Officer and the Administrative Services Manager for 12 years and retired in June so I could run for the seat. And I'm just here to announce that and get your help and support in any way I can. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Joe. Anybody in Tahoe area wish to have public comment? Seeing none, anyone else? Good, we'll close the public comment and move to board member and county executive reports. Any board member reports? Any executive? No. Okay, good, thank you. Now we're going to move to our timed items. And my apologies to the item number 1A. What I'd like to do, if it's agreeable with the board, is to take care of the 9:05 and timed items, and then the sheriff's department item, and that should go quickly. So if that's okay with everyone, I'd appreciate. Okay, we're all right with that. All right. So then, we will take up our 9:05 timed item, a commendation for the League of Women Voters of Placer County for 10 years of service and outreach in Placer County. And I've got a nice. Oh, okay. That's it, right? Oh, is everybody good?
Good morning.
Morning.
My name is Lynn Snyder, and I'm a member of the board for the League of Women Voters of Placer County, and we are thankful for your commendation.
Oh, okay, so I'm going to go ahead and read the commendation.
Please.
Okay? Yeah. This is in a matter of a commendation recognizing the League of Women Voters of Placer County for 10 years of service and outreach in Placer County. Whereas September 2018 is the 10th anniversary of the founding of the League of Women Voters of Placer County, and whereas the League of Women Voters is a citizens organization that has worked tirelessly, it says since 1920, but it's been since 1848 that the women's right to vote was on the agenda. Just wanted to point that out. To improve our government and engage all citizens in the decisions that impact their lives. The League is a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization of women and men that works on vital issues of concern to its members and the public. The League of Women Voters operates at the national, state, and local levels through more than 700 state and local leagues in all 50 states. And whereas the League continues its historic commitment to register, educate, and mobilize voters to ensure that our elections are fair, free, and accessible. The League encourages informed and active participation in government, works to increase understanding of major public policy issues, and influences public policy through education and advocacy. And whereas the hard work done by the League of Women Voters of Placer County has had a great effect on our communities and makes California a better place to live by working to create and sustain a democracy where every person has the desire, the right, the knowledge, and the confidence to participate. And whereas it is appropriate to recognize the efforts of members of the League of Women Voters of Placer County, both past and present, who have volunteered their time and service to the League of Women Voters of Placer County, now therefore let it be known that the above commendation was duly passed by the Board of Supervisors of the County of Placer on behalf of the citizens of Placer County at their regular meeting August 28, 2018. So I'll bring this down to you. This is the time when everybody applauds. Who gets this?
We'll all do it. Can we, can we do it this way?
Yeah, come on.
Yeah, I like your fairy, everybody cluster. Come on, Mary Ellen. Come on, dear. Oh, you're kind of short. I am short. Be in the front. Oh, it's okay. I'll put my head. Joyce, there you go. Karen, come on. Karen, Karen, come in. Karen,
Shut up. All right, ladies. Thank you. Thank you.
Wait, one more.
Another day in the sun.
Thank you. And if any of you ladies wish, hello, how are you?
Jim, how are you?
Good.
Thank you.
If anyone wants to make a comment,
Just
we're fine.
a little bit.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you. Members of the board, we are really proud of the work that we have done for this county, and we would like to thank you for recognizing our organization and our work, and to pledge to you that, of course, we have made this commitment for for the future, and we will continue to provide these services and these programs to the members of our county. We have already received many requests for the league to provide the program that they do prior to every election, where there are ballot measures on the ballot, and we provide the nonpartisan, impartial, and informative programs. And right now we're slated to address at least 1,000 people between now and the election. I would also like to comment to you and to thank you for the excellent staff. It was a pleasure to work with both Megan and Gina. They were consummate professionals and very, very friendly, user-friendly. Thank you again.
Thank you, and I just want to remind everybody that next year will be the 100th anniversary of the passage of Amendment, 20th Amendment, for giving the right of women to vote throughout the United States. But Placer County, as always a forward-thinking county, passed it in, gave the women the right to vote in 1911. So, all right. So,
thank you.
Thank you. All right. Thank you. Thank you very much.
You voted aye on that, right?
Oh yeah, you betcha. My grandmother told me to. Smarty pants. Okay, we'll let these ladies smile out.
We're sorry to abandon you, but
Well, thanks for coming.
thank you again.
Now, we're going to move to our Health and Human Services timed item. This is a proclamation declaring September 2018 as Recovery Month in Placer County to demonstrate continued support and commitment to mental health, substance use, treatment, and recovery.
Good morning,
Good morning.
Chairman Holmes and members of the board. I am Amy Ellis. With me is Cindy Claflin, and I also have some New Leaf staff and a mental health, alcohol, and drug board member, Sharon, and some of our staff from the substance use team here with me today. They all assisted in this year's planning of the event and will be there at the event. And we're here to have you proclaim September 2018 as Recovery Month in Placer County. Recovery happens every day for people here in Placer County, and we are so blessed to be able to witness that in our line of work. And their stories are proof that prevention works, treatment is effective, and recovery and wellness is possible. In celebrating and sharing the stories of those who have achieved recovery, we encourage others to seek recovery and wellness as well. With commitment and support, people who experience substance use disorders and/or mental health concerns can find help and embark on a new path toward improved health and wellness. This September, National Recovery Month celebrates its 29th anniversary. This year's theme, Join the Voices for Recovery, Invest in Health, Home, Purpose, and Community, highlights the value of wellness, family, and community support throughout recovery. It invites individuals in recovery and their family members to share their personal stories and successes in order to encourage others. We all play an important role in helping people with substance use and/or mental health struggles live healthy and rewarding lives. Numerous county and community partners, such as the substance use treatment and recovery providers, mental health providers, individuals in recovery, culturally focused and faith-based organizations, will join the System of Care staff and Mental Health, Alcohol, and Drug Advisory Board members in sponsoring Placer County's annual event this year on Saturday, September 8th, 2018. Your attendance will demonstrate your support of the recovery community, including those who provide prevention, treatment, and recovery support services. Cindy Claflin is here from Mental Health America, is here to tell us a little bit more about this year's event.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. This year's event will be held on September 8th from 10 to 2 at the Recreation Park in Auburn. There's going to be lots of music, lots of fun, lots of events and games and prizes, lots of resources from the community to share with everyone. And resources are from the treatment and recovery programs. There will also be a free barbecue that everyone can enjoy to participate in. And we hope that you can all be there.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else? I'll go ahead and present this proclamation. Whereas in Placer County, many people are living productive, satisfying lives as a result of recovery from a substance use disorder and/or a mental health condition. And whereas prevention of substance use and/or mental health issues works, treatment is effective, and people can recover in our area and around the nation. And whereas preventing and overcoming substance use and/or mental health disorders is essential to achieving healthy lifestyles, both physically, emotionally, and whereas we must encourage relatives and friends of people with substance use and/or mental health disorders to implement preventive measures, recognize the signs of the problem, and guide those in need to appropriate treatment and recovery support service. And whereas residents of Placer County have experienced recovery on their own through treatment programs or with assistance of peer support, self-help, faith-based organization, or medication treatment. And whereas real stories of long-term recovery can inspire others to ask for help and improve their own lives, the lives of the families, and our community. And whereas successful treatment and recovery programs have been demonstrated to reduce unnecessary county healthcare costs, reduce costs of lost productivity, and increase county productivity by getting more workers into recovery, reduce the number of people in jail and prisons, reduce street and gang violence, reduce school dropout rates, reduce the cost of crime and the rate of recidivism, reduce the burden on law enforcement officials, reduce the total financial strain on our economy, and improve the quality of life for individuals and for society as a whole. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the above proclamation was duly passed by the Board of Supervisors of the County of Placer on behalf of the citizens of Placer County at a regular meeting held August 28th, 2018, proclaiming the month of September 2018 as Recovery Month in Placer County. So I will bring this down and present this to you.
I think Sharon.
Yeah, Sharon. I hope you noticed that I wore my purple.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh.
It's all right.
Yay.
Thank you. Thank you, Sharon. Thank you.
Now we're going to call for the 910 sheriff's item. Where's all the ladies? We have all these ladies here, and you come up by yourself?
Sorry.
That's all right. This is a jail jail booking, jail access, and incarceration fees, public hearing, and ordinance amendment. Mark Giacomini.
Yes, sir. Good morning, Chairman Holmes, members of the board, Mr. Leopold, Ms. Schwab, Mark Giacomini with the Placer County Sheriff's Office. Here to talk to you this morning about jail booking, incarceration, and access fees. Specifically, we're asking you to conduct a public hearing to introduce and adopt an ordinance amending the Sheriff's Office jail booking and access fees charged to cities and incarceration fees that are charged by the court to offenders at sentencing based on an annual study of costs and fees. Anticipated revenues for these fees are included in the Sheriff's Office 1819 proposed budget. There is no impact to the general fund additionally. I will talk to you about these fees briefly. They're pretty complicated how these fees work, and it takes a minute to wrap your head around them. The booking fees that we receive from the state of California typically cover our booking costs at the jail. What we are allowed to do constitutionally is we are allowed to charge the cities when they exceed their 3-year average for bookings of misdemeanors excluding DUIs and domestic violence and other restraining orders. We can charge the cities every time they exceed their 3-year average. That cost has gone up to $630, an increase of, I believe, is $77 over last year. We're also allowed to charge inmates, or not inmates, but offenders that we book into our jail Typically, we don't do that. That's the same cost, $630. We typically don't do that because the return on that is really pennies on the dollar. It's based on a study of their ability to pay. And what we found over the years is if we charge that to them and then we actually try to collect on it, it costs us more in employee time than it is that we receive the revenues. The last piece is the incarceration fees. The incarceration fees are the ability of the court to charge someone that they sentence to our jail. We have been unsuccessful over the years getting the court to actually charge that fee. So these fees, as we walk through, the access and booking fees are increasing to $630, an increase of $77. The incarceration fees for medium and maximum security are increasing $52 to $224, and for minimum security, the fees are $103, actually a decrease of $38 over the prior year. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Any questions, Supervisor Bueller?
So my confusion on this issue is the incongruity between our terms, and if this is actually codified in our county ordinances, we reference the booking fee in the chart that's contained on page 73 of our board agenda, page 2 of your staff report. And we show the booking fee in the chart at $166. Yet the narrative speaks to the fees for jail booking for Placer County arrestees will be $630. So we have a chart that shows booking fees of $166, and yet a narrative that speaks to $630. And then down below that, we speak to jail access. It reads, the jail access fee will be charged at 100% the cost of booking inmates, which I would read to mean the booking fee. So 100% of the booking fee. And yet the jail access fee is the $630, which is referenced in the narrative above as the booking fee. So I'm a little confused as to the consistency internal within our own document here and how this reads. Maybe I'm just not understanding some terms or something, or?
No, sir. It's a very complicated ordinance, and I would agree. That's why I started. It's difficult to wrap your head around it. The booking fee and the access fee are actually the same fee, charged to different places. So the booking fee is what we as Placer County can charge to someone that we arrest and we book into our jail.
That I understood.
The access fee is the same cost as the booking fee, but that's what we would charge the cities when they exceed their 3-year average. These descriptions are directly out of county code, or directly out of the state ordinance.
Okay.
And so we kind of mirror that. It does take a minute to wrap your head around it. The $166 is what, excuse me, that's what we could charge to the cities. That's also called a booking fee because we receive revenue from the state.
Right.
$465,000.
Right.
If we had the ability to project the difference between what they were actually going to book and what we get reimbursed for up front, because that revenue comes into the county at the beginning of the year based on the governor's budget, that $166 is what we could charge the cities for the delta between what we get reimbursed to book and what they actually book.
Okay.
The other part of the ordinance is when they exceed their 3-year, so that's the 166. That is determined to be the difference between what we actually get reimbursed and what they actually book on an annual basis.
Right.
Different from the booking fee that we can charge if they exceed their 3-year average.
Right.
Very complicated ordinance. But that 166 is a technically it's a booking fee, but that is supposed to capture the delta between what the state reimburses us up front and what we could charge them if we knew what the number was going to be at the beginning of the year.
Okay. All right. I'll buy that.
If I can interject for a second. If you go to the bottom where it says fees for jail access, it says rates charged pursuant to this section will only be charged if bookings for misdemeanors and municipal code violations exceed the 3-year average.
Correct.
Right. So
that's different than the fee up top.
Exactly. Right.
Correct.
So you start with tier 1 and then you move down to tier 2 if they exceed it.
What and what's complicated about this is because we have no way to project what that's going to be on an annual basis. We are required to update these fees on an annual basis. We typically don't ever charge them because, like I said, we don't have a way to project what, say, Roseville's going to book at the beginning of the fiscal year. If we did, we could charge them that $166 based on the delta between what the state is reimbursing us.
No,
Sorry.
I agree with you, and I understand it. All I'm saying is I agree with Kirk. To the average person that's looking at this, they're seeing two sets of numbers here, and they're kind of like, who's on first?
And one reference
Exactly.
to a booking fee, which is delineated in our chart. So maybe it's a terminology thing.
Yeah, I think what it is that
chart
you
or what?
throw out the references to the code because you've got that in your, and I'm not trying to tell you how to draft a memo, but maybe you just reference the code in your memo and then use a different way to explain it without using those code sections, because I think that's what's kind of getting people thrown off.
Well, and then thank you for that clarification. If I may, what then additionally compounded is my understanding upon reading this was that what we illustrate as the booking fee of previously 160 and now 166 is some kind of function of that jail access fee. Is that?
No, sir.
It's not.
So the state reimburses us for booking fees up front at the beginning of the fiscal year, or they pay us for projected
Right,
booking.
at an assumed rate of?
At an assumed rate calculated on the governor's budget. So
Okay.
that, what the state reimburses us, or the state gives us for booking fees. at
But
the beginning of the
we're
fiscal year-
saying that amount is actually how much?
Well, we're projected to receive $464,000.
No, I'm sorry, because they're reimbursing us in advance, right? For what we
Correct, but that's
assume.
not part of this study. That the money that we receive from the state is based on the governor's budget and has nothing
Okay.
to do with this study.
So we're reimbursed
A flat rate from the state based on the governor's budget.
with zero regard to our actual cost.
I absolutely concur 100%. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Based on the governor's budget.
All right, then,
And not broken down by city.
okay.
So that's what further complicates it, is that we have no mechanism by which to charge this $166 because the state, when they give us the booking fees, doesn't break it down by city.
So then I guess I was incorrect when I read the jail access fees were because we throw in the jail access fees will be charged at 100% of the cost of booking inmates.
Correct. If they exceed
But the
their 3-year
booking
average.
fee at 166 is not the actual cost.
No, sir. That's meant to represent the delta between
Okay.
what the state gives
So what
us.
is the actual cost then?
$630.
So that's what I said. So the actual booking fee is this jail access fee, the $630.
Yes, sir.
Okay, that was my question to start this little narrative right here. Was what we're raising this jail access fee to is actually the booking fee, but we call the booking fee the delta between what we're reimbursed. Am I in any way, shape, or form correct? I hope so, because it leads to my ultimate question.
I'll say yes. There are three things. There's an incarceration fee, there's a booking fee, and there's an access fee.
Okay, but the 166 is a function of what?
That's a function of representing the delta between what the state gives us for booking
Versus
and
what we say is $630.
I don't think it's that easy of a comparison, no, because the state doesn't base it on $630.
All right.
The state doesn't use our cost for booking to pay us for booking fees.
Okay, but we are saying our booking fee is $630. Is that what this number is?
What we're saying is the actual cost for us to book an inmate is $630.
And
correct.
is that what this is?
Correct. That's what we would charge to the cities
So-
if they exceeded the 3-year average.
Okay,
Correct.
so last year it was 533. Or 553.
It's gone up $77. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you, because that's what leads to my next question. Now I understand that there is some direct line correlation between this and this, right?
I'm sorry. I don't want to waste your time, but I think what you're trying to mix the two. The 630 is a reflection of our actual costs based on actual expenditures from 2 years prior.
Right.
The 166 is also a calculation that's based on what the state has given us, which is not determined using the $630. The $630 is our cost for booking. The state does not reimburse us based on our actual cost for booking.
So let me make this maybe, hopefully, a little easier. In order to arrive at the 166, we subtracted what the state gave us from a number, and then divided it by the number of bookings in order to arrive at that number, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So what was that number a function of? That number that we subtracted the state's reimbursement, that top line number,
correct,
from which we subtract the state's reimbursement, was a function of what? Our number of bookings
total
divided by our cost, which came up to the 630?
No, I will get the study, and I'm happy to meet with you and go through the entire study and show you how that calculation works. It's a function of bookings, the money we get from the state, I believe, and so in the 18-19 budget, $464,844. So it's a function of taking that money that we get from the state for bookings, a calculation of the number of bookings, and then the delta between those two.
Okay.
Right, but it's 2 years prior.
Okay.
So it wouldn't be the 464. It's a fairly complicated formula. I think to answer your question, yes, it is ultimately it's a product between the actual cost for us to book and what the state reimburses us.
Mr. Giacomini, would you be willing to meet with Mr. Euler afterwards?
Absolutely.
And then one last question, which might help then our meeting, is I assuming, and perhaps incorrectly so, that there was some correlation between the booking fee as we reference it in writing of $630 and the booking fee that we show in the chart of $166, assuming there was some correlation there, simply looking at the year-over-year cost escalation, looking at the jail access fee, it went up 18%, and yet the booking fee is only proposed to go up 10%. And so my question will go to, and we can discuss this to the chairman's point, we can discuss this separately, but I'd like to be able to dig in a little to try to understand why the booking fee went up almost twice the rate of the jail access fee in the chart, though it says booking fee up there. The jail access fee is going up at almost twice the rate of the booking fee.
I would say, I'm happy to meet with you. I would say it's because there is not a direct correlation between the two.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any other board member comments before I open up the public hearing? All right. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone here that wishes to address the board on this issue? Is there anyone in the Tahoe area that wishes to address the board on this issue? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board for approval.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the item. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Thank you, Mr. Giacomini.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, absent a clear understanding, I can't support the item, so I'm voting no.
Okay.
Thank you.
So the motion is passed on a 3-1 vote. Now, thank you, everybody, for your indulgence in getting through these items before we take up the 9 o'clock timed item. This is a public hearing for the proposed formation of a tourist-based improvement district in Olympic Valley and Alpine Meadows. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Jennifer Merchant with the County Executive Office. We are here, as you said, to hold a public hearing and count any protest ballots for the proposed Squaw Valley Alpine Meadows Micro Mass Transit District. And this is the third meeting we've had on this subject, so you're probably familiar with a lot of this information. I do want to roll through some of it fairly quickly here for you and get you to the public hearing. So we have one action requested today. You will note on your board packet on the agenda as well as the staff report, there are 2 items requested that you take action on, but I did want to point out that item number 2 has been removed because it is actually incorporated in the resolution of formation. You'll see it on page 2, number 3. So we removed approval of the management plan because it's already incorporated. So the action requested has 3 parts as required by the California Streets and Highways Code, that for purposes of implementing the micro mass transit district, that we tabulate protests, present the results of those protests, and should the results of those tabulated protests result in no majority protest, adopt the resolution of formation that would finalize the formation of the district and levy the assessment starting October 1st, 2018. So the proposal for the district is to add 1% special benefit assessment to two components, gross lodging receipts as well as gross single-day ski lift tickets at Squaw Valley and Alpine Meadows. The revenue expectations as outlined in the plan are lodging revenue of $465,000 per year, and this is based on revenue collections, actual collections in 2017, as well as annual lift ticket revenue of $250,000 a year. They believe that's a safe number based on an average ski season, for a total budget of $715,000. That would allow them to operate a shuttle system that goes around the Squaw Valley and Alpine Meadows communities. It's important to note that the shuttle system does go into the neighborhoods, because the single-family residences and condos in the neighborhood areas that operate rentals do operate as a business. So those businesses are going to be assessed, and they would also be served by that service. The district would be created for a single 5-year term, but can be extended by 10-year terms in the future. There's a map for you of Squaw Valley, Alpine Meadows, and the proposed boundaries. And then a little bit on the proposal. I do want to point out that Placer County would be represented on the board, and we will be bringing that to your board on the board. We'll be bringing that back to you at a future meeting. Specifically on this proposal, the funds spent will be on services that provide a specific benefit to the businesses that pay. It is customized to fit the needs of the district at the direction of the district board. It would provide a stable funding source for the operation of the transit service and really provide an improved competitive advantage to resorts outside of the Tahoe area. Some of the changes that you'll recall that they made in the management plan last time include they will be connecting with the TART bus system, and they will consider folding into future transit service expansions or business improvement district expansions if those occur in the future. And as I noted earlier, they did recently add the lift ticket assessment component. So you see the timeline before you, highlighted in red is today's hearing. If the resolution of formation is approved, we would be asked to enter into an agreement with the district to levy and collect and remit the 1% assessment. We expect, as I mentioned, that the assessment would be collected starting on October 1st, and they hope to start service beginning this winter period. Okay, so now would be the time to open the public hearing and tabulate any additional ballots. During the public hearing, we'll receive comments as well as allow any businesses to lodge a protest vote. If any of the protests total more than 50% of the proposed assessment, no action would be taken today, and they would not be able to come back with a new proposal for a 1-year period. To date, we have received 62.5% petitions in favor of the proposed district, and I do know that we've received one ballot in opposition, a protest ballot. So we would have an opportunity to receive any additional during the hearing, and then those will be tabulated by the clerk, and if no majority protests are received, your board would have the opportunity to approve or consider the resolution of formation. So you can open the public hearing whenever you're ready, unless you have any questions.
Supervisor Euler has a question.
Couple questions. First of all, why was the decision made to exclude season passes?
Because a lot of the season passes are also connected to other ski resorts and are more challenging to tabulate the total amount that would accrue back to usage in Squaw Valley and Alpine Meadows. And I do know Vice President and Chief Operating Officer Casey Bland from Squaw Valley and Alpine Meadows is here, and he may be able to address that for you in more detail.
So the Squaw Alpine season passes are connected to other resorts in the Tahoe Basin?
Many of the passes are, not all of them are. I don't, well, Casey can answer about the Squaw Alpine Pass
Yeah,
specifically.
if it could, that'd be great. And then we're looking at a 5-year term with the option to extend it another 5 years.
Another 10 years.
Oh, another 10 years,
Yes.
I'm sorry. How are we defining success at the end of 5 years? Do we have any objective standards that show a ridership of X, a daily trip reduction of Y, anything that has us actually defining success for this first 5 years?
We don't define success that way. That would be up to the nonprofit organization that will be managing the service on behalf of the district, the proposed SATCO that we would be developing an agreement with in the future. Placer County will have a seat on the board and will certainly be able to weigh in on what we define success as. I can tell you with some startup services that we've done, pilot services in the area previously, 3 riders per hour was something that we found to be okay as a starting point for a pilot service, but then you expect to see growth in that in future years. It would really be up to the SATCO board, though, to make that decision, and not up to us once the district is formed.
Okay.
Thank you. You have to everybody stop. There you go. Ms. Schwab has a question.
I'd also point out within the management plan that the SATCO is required to return with an annual report to the board.
Yes.
That would outline any improvements, the estimate of cost of providing the improvements, method of assessing, basically telling the board how it went per year. So there will be a check and balance.
Well, I understand the check-in, but the check-in is simply to explain the results of what has happened. What I'm wondering is, do we have anything whereby objectively we can say, okay, this worked or it didn't? If a benchmark is not established up front, saying our goal is to meet this kind of ridership or this kind of reduction of daily vehicle traffic within the valley, within the 2 different areas, we don't have anything like that. How do we know if we are being successful with what we're trying to do? And so far, I haven't heard any real. I just, I look at transit systems as we run them today, and they are constructs of a different era. And I think most of us might agree that if we had it all to do over again, we might do things a little differently today than the way we did it back then. And not have empty buses. But, this is, again, the struggle when you start talking about transit. I'm just saying, since we are starting something new, do we have anything that says, okay, if we hit this kind of ridership, this kind of adoption, then we feel like it will have been successful?
So there is not a specific figure outlined in the management plan. I will say that this type of service with a fixed route with the opportunity for people using an app to phone in or request a stop is a little bit more like Uber or Lyft or something like that. So people do have an opportunity. So it is moving more in the direction of what other transit districts are considering doing, as opposed to a regular fixed route. It does deviate off of that route. So I think they are using something that's a little bit more modern in comparison with the regular service that you're seeing operated in Placer County currently. I would add that Casey, who is luckily here today, has operated transit systems at ski resorts before, including at Mammoth. So he has a lot of experience with it, and I think having that engagement from somebody with that experience will help the board set a standard that they believe that they can benchmark against.
Because the figure that you just threw out of hoping to achieve 3 riders an hour.
Sounds
at
pretty
an
low.
Annual cost of $700,000. Let's just set up a helicopter in the valley and move people that way, because it sounds like that would
Oh,
be
I don't know
cheaper.
about the helicopter. We might get some complaints about that.
And you know, what are you doing to actually eliminate traffic if you got 3 riders in a vehicle? That's pretty much standard of what goes into most ski resorts right now. It's a little over 2, if I understand correctly.
Per vehicle, that's
Yeah.
correct.
So,
Yeah.
so we're gonna spend $700,000 to add a vehicle to carry 3 riders who could have gone in a vehicle that would have gone anyway.
And those are pilot services that I'm referring to that aren't necessarily a peak winter season at Squaw Valley and Alpine Meadows. I think you're going to see some peaks during the winter time and then maybe some dips, and I'm going to assume that they're going to operate their service accordingly.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Supervisor Durant.
No, I was just going to say that I appreciate the concern here, but with that particular issue, but what we have before us is just the formation piece. You know, once we get on the board can, it would behoove them, if they want to get an additional 10 years, to be able to show us that, you know, that it works and that ridership is up and all of those metrics are in there. So, you know, I'm not necessarily concerned about it at this juncture, but I'm sure that if they don't institute some type of things that Kirk's concerned about, a future board is going to come back, just like we did with the boat, and pull that right out from under. You know?
Yeah, good. Any other comments? Seeing none, then did the gentleman need to come forward? What's Mr. Casey? Yeah.
I am curious as to that issue of the season passes that Squaw sells to Squaw and Alpine, and why those aren't subject to the same fee that a daily ticket is.
Well, Board, happy to discuss the options with you. My name is Casey Bland, Senior Vice President of Operations at Squaw and Alpine. So, yeah, our seasons passes are a kind of a jumbled package, if you will, because they're combined into all 13 of our resorts, some stretching as far as Mount Tremblant in Quebec. You know, Mammoth is obviously part, Southern California, Winter Park, Steamboat, and the like. So when people purchase these passes, a incremental portion, you know, goes to the resorts as they show up that day. But by far, the greatest number of benefits that we see as happening for our guests are the single-day users that are taking spaces in the parking lots and other things. So that's what we're trying to hopefully achieve. It's not just the ridership, but the improved parking and service capacity that we're going to achieve. So we are very happy, you know, to do the assessment on the day tickets, as we found that to be successful relative to those individuals that are specifically adding to, in this case, the congestion of the roadways and of the parking lots. And I must point out again that, you know, while we have great, you know, first mile access to our ski resorts in the airports and the like, and even what we call second mile from the buses and other transportation from, in our case, either Sacramento or Reno airports, it's that last mile, the final mile, that really is a challenge for us with the congestion in the valley and with all the transportation issues that currently exist. So I hope that answers.
Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you.
All right. Seeing no more questions from the board, I'll go ahead and open up the public hearing and see if there's anybody here that wants to address the board on this item. Is there anyone in the Tahoe area that wishes to address the board on this item? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and ask the clerk, is this the time where you tabulate the ballots or give us the...
We did not receive a majority protest.
Okay. So now, since it's passed, there's no majority of protest votes. What is the pleasure of the board? It's been moved and seconded to approve the item, the formation of a tourist-based improvement district in Olympic Valley and Alpine Meadows. All those in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, the item is moved. And again, thank you so much for waiting for this item to come forward as we did some other business before you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Jennifer. Now we'll move to our 9:20 timed item, Public Works and Facilities, Community Development Resource Agency, easement abandonment portions of Bayfront and Center Streets in Carnelian Bay. Good morning.
Good morning.
me get situated here. I'm Alan Bruce. I'm the planner up in Tahoe, Placer County. Before you, we are going to ask the board for two different items to be approved. One is the abandonment. Ken will do part of the presentation after I'm doing a little bit, and then the last step would be the change in the conditional use permit. So the Garwood's proposal that we have here today is the easement abandonment, like I was mentioning, on Bay, Front, and Center Streets in Carnelian Bay, and amendment to the Garwood's conditional use permit and variance conditions. To get people oriented, there are two lots that Garwood's currently owns. This is where the restaurant is. It's in Carnelian Bay. This is the vicinity map of the location at Lake Tahoe. We have the Conservancy properties over in this location. What we'll be discussing basically is these paper roads right here. There's Bay Street that's here, and there's currently a deck for the commercial restaurant at that location. Approximate size of those two lots is about 20,000 square feet. This is the existing conditions. This is looking, the first picture on your top left is from the pier, looking directly at Garwood's. On the right, you do see what I'll be talking about a little bit more is the deck. And the bottom there is the Bay Street, is the public access, and then you do see what the streets look like right now with the parking. So there is some history with this particular property. July 9th, 1990, there was a conditional use permit that was approved to allow that 2,376 square foot commercial deck. There was a parking variance as well. There was some ownership interest of the streets that existed on Garwood's property and have been a subject of a dispute between the county and Garwood's for decades. In 2013, Garwood's did file a lawsuit over the property interest and the conditional use permit. A settlement ultimately was agreed to through court. It was reached between the county and Garwood's, and Garwood's went ahead and applied for two applications to the county. One is the abandonment, the other one is to modify the conditional use permit and variance. The rationale behind the conditional use permit basically is to update it because a lot of the improvements typically that are with the conditions of approval have been satisfied, and there's some other key things in the settlement that I'll go in later. But so now I'll pass it over to Ken, and he'll go over the abandonment portion.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairman, members of the board. My name is Ken Grimm with the Department of Public Works and Facilities. And there has always been a dispute as to the easement interests we actually enjoy on Senator Bay and Front Streets on the lake side of Highway 89. That dispute's been going on for decades. We have no plan to ever build a road on those easements. It's just not in our plan. We don't see it. We don't plan for it in any manner. We do, though, see that those easements have access, public access to the lake and along the lake shore, which does have great value to us and is very limited at the lake. And so the proposal is to go ahead and abandon areas, you can see those hatched areas up here on the map, that we do not need. In fact, most of those areas, the lower left is really the deck area that can't be used now, and the ones on the upper area are really the parking lot area, which actually will remain in some sort of public use between that and the Conservancy properties. But making sure that we do have very clear and agreed to rights on the remaining portions for public access to and along the lake. And so we believe it's consistent with the approved settlement agreement your board made in May. And so we are asking your board to adopt a resolution to make the necessary findings and abandon those portions of Bay, Front, and Center Streets in Carnelian Bay as described in the exhibits in the staff report, and subject to the findings that are also included in the resolution. And with that, be happy to answer any questions, but if not, I'll turn it over to Alan to talk a little bit more about the conditional use permit.
I see no questions, so. Go ahead.
Oh, okay.
We should take this matter separately.
Yeah.
We should ask for a public hearing, then.
Oh, it's not on.
Action taken on the resolution.
Okay, all right. So I'm advised that this is a public hearing, and I'll open up the public hearing. Anybody in the public wish to address us on this item? Anyone?
It's on the abandonment.
On there, okay. Anyone in Tahoe? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Now we can move forward.
Actually, what we want to do right now is we want to take action on the resolution for the abandonment before we move on to the use permit.
Okay, so we need to adopt the resolution. Is there a motion? Okay, it's moved and seconded to adopt the easement abandonment, adopting a resolution to abandon a portion of Bayfront and Center Streets in Carnelian Bay. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Seeing none, now we'll move on to item B. Thanks.
Okay, I'll continue on the conditional use permit modification. Part of the settlement, there was three main areas that we did look at with county council and through the settlement is to, the three are listed up above, is the maintenance and management of the deck, parking lot, pier, beach, and pedestrian pathway will remain Garwood's obligation. Garwood's will allow public parking consistent with the requirements of the conditional use permit or any amended or new conditional use permit in the entire portion of the parking lot owned by Garwood's. And thirdly, Garwood's will agree to maintain signage indicating public access to the pier and parking lot and pedestrian pathways and agreed upon locations. Down below is the site plan of Garwood's and the abandonment of the streets you just took action on. With that, it is attached as part of the strikeouts that will be removed from the existing conditional use permit. Underline is the added language that would be proposed by staff as well as through the settlement to do the changes on the conditional use permit and the variance. There is no change to the variance. Again, the variance is to parking. And staff is proposing to adopt a resolution amending the conditions of approval in accordance with proposed modification and attach findings on the resolution and findings in the attached staff report, attachment 4.
Any questions from board members? Now, this is a public hearing, right? Now, I'm opening up the right public hearing. Is there anyone here that wishes to address the board on this item? Anyone in Tahoe? Seeing none, bring it back to the board for action. Second. It's been moved and seconded to approve the amendment to conditional and use permit variance conditions of approval for Garwood's. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Thank you. All right. Thank you very much. Now we'll move to our 9:30 timed item, County Executive Community Development Resource Agency Placer Ranch Specific Plan and Sunset Area Plan Amendment to Professional Services Agreement with McCann's Homes. Oh, hello.
Hi, good morning, members of the board. Michelle Kingsbury with the County Executive Office and Project Manager for the Placer Ranch portion. This is a two-part item. I'll present item A, and then Crystal Jacobson from the Community Development Resource Agency will present item B.
Okay.
For item A, we're asking your consideration to approve the Fourth Amendment to the McCann-Somps Engineering contract in the amount of $399,250, which would bring the total contract amount to $2,350,290. I'll go through briefly the reasons why we need the amendment. As you're aware, we're in the throes of updating the specific plan and processing that through the environmental process. We have a second admin draft EIR that we're currently going through those comments. The Fourth Amendment will allow us to replenish some of the buckets that we use, buckets in the contract line items, to do some additional technical work. In addition, it will provide some extra funding to revise the land plan. We're working quite a bit with the adjacent cities and other interested stakeholders throughout this process, and as you're aware with these big specific plans, they do get tweaked throughout the process. We're looking at amending the land plan to include three key elements that I think will address some of the comments that we received from our neighboring jurisdictions as well, and I'll highlight those real quickly for you. Proposed amendments to the land plan include reducing the number of residential units from roughly 5,800 to 5,600 through a series of changes. We've worked with our adjacent city partners and gotten a lot of comments back with this specific plan. One of the comments was, is there the ability to fully park, pursuant to our general plan standards, the active park acreage on site? So we went through an exhaustive exercise seeing if we were able to increase some of the active park acreage on site, and it looks like we are able to do that so that we meet the general plan standards of 5 acres per 1,000 of active park sites, which addresses some of the comments that we received from the adjacent cities. That kind of creates a snowball effect with that as well. We looked at the proposed amendment to the landfill buffer in terms of how close these residential units could be. Right now, we've got roughly under 200 units between that 2,000 feet and 1,000 feet to the property line of the landfill. And we looked at, is there the ability to take those 200 units and move them out of that area? And it looks like we are able to achieve that. And so the proposed land plan amendment also moves those units out so that we have no residential units proposed within 2,000 feet of the landfill property lines. In addition to that, through these kind of snowball effects and minor tweaks of the land plan, we looked at the ability to activate the town center a little bit more and shifting some of the residential land uses, and we've been able to achieve that tool too. All these achievements that we can do with the land plan, the critical element, and what we did is looked at all the technical studies that don't result in any changes to any of the backbone infrastructure planned. So while these are minor tweaks and there is a little bit of a snowball effect, we're still able to maintain the technical studies and the backbone infrastructure that is planned within that area. So it was a good achievement. Our property owner is supportive of these requested amendments. However, it does require revising the specific plan development standards and design guidelines pursuant to those proposed changes. I know that's quick, but with that, you're pretty familiar with the project. Happy to answer any questions that you have as you consider this fourth amendment.
Okay, Supervisor Duran.
Yeah, thanks for bringing this forward, Michelle. You know, I've had a couple of elected officials outside the county make comments with regards to the repayment of the of these fees that we're upfronting, and I don't know if it's jealousy or ignorance or whatever, but can you explain to everybody here how that mechanism works so we can put this to bed once and for all?
Sure. Early on in the process, when we took on this the specific plan, your board approved an MOU with the property owner which basically states that through this process we're tracking costs and what these technical studies and contracts cost, and that we'll look at translating that into what we call a specific plan fee or fee that would be included within the development agreement to recoup those costs.
So they're going to be repaid.
That's the proposal, correct?
And it's in the DA.
It will be.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Any other questions from board members? Seeing none, anyone in the audience wish to address this item? And anyone in Tahoe wish to address this item? Seeing none?
Thank you.
All right.
Turn it over to Crystal now.
Good morning, Chairman and members of the board. I'm Crystal Jacobson with Planning Services Division.
Excuse me, Crystal, we do have a motion and a second on this item.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right. That's okay.
I was moving.
Okay. Yeah. So we're being asked to vote. We got a motion and a second on the Placer Ranch specific plan and Sunset Area Plan amendment to professional service agreement with McKay and Soames Civil Engineers. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, that item has moved. And now, Crystal.
My apologies. I was
right.
keeping you moving.
Okay.
Or I thought it was anyway. So this item is a follow-up to Michelle's. It's a request for approval of a contract amendment with Ascent Environmental for $299,230 for preparation of the Sunset Area Plan, Placer Ranch Specific Plan Environmental Impact Report. This would increase the total amount of the contract to $1,205,580. Your board approved that Ascent contract back in July 2016. The EIR does analyze both the Sunset Area Plan and the Placer Ranch Specific Plan, so it's a very large undertaking. It analyzes the Sunset Area Plan at a programmatic level and the Placer Ranch Specific Plan at a project level. We have met a critical milestone, as Michelle noted, which is the preparation of the admin draft EIR. And also, as Michelle noted, over the last few months, there has been a focused effort to coordinate with our neighboring agencies on the preparation of that document and really to solicit feedback on the environmental analysis. And so this contract amendment is really reflective of that feedback. And it would fund really kind of three key areas of additional environmental analysis. The first really is to incorporate the changes that Michelle spoke about, related to the Placer Ranch Specific Plan project. So this task would really ensure that every resource chapter in the environmental impact report is reflective of all of those changes. The second key component is to really address the feedback that we have received from some key neighboring agencies regarding the environmental analysis. And so really we've determined that additional analysis in key resource areas is needed. And then the third is really in response to feedback received from the California State University, Sacramento regarding the environmental analysis for the Sac State campus site in the Plaza Ranch specific plan. After coordinating with the university on the environmental impact analysis, it has been determined that the analysis should further break out impacts specific to that site. And so this contract amendment would fund a task that would do just that. It would identify the impacts specific to that site and frame up mitigation that would be related to the university site. I will point out this is also something that was suggested by our neighboring agencies, so it's really in response to some comments and feedback that we got for neighboring agencies. And furthermore, it does provide more utility for the EIR for the master planning that would take place on that university property. So again, I just want to point out that we have met that critical milestone of the preparation of the admin draft EIR. We're working on preparation of the draft, which we expect to be out by the end of the calendar year. To that end, following release of that draft, we do anticipate coming back before your board to request funding for the final phase of the work program, which would include funding for tasks associated with responding to comments that we receive on the draft and preparing that final environmental impact report. So with that, we do request your board approve the contract amendment for $299,230 with Ascent Environmental. And funding from this amendment is available in the Planning Services Community Development Fiscal Year 2018-19 proposed budget. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from board members? I see none. Anyone in the audience wish to address this item? Anyone in Tahoe wish to address this item? Seeing none, bring it back to the board for action. It's been moved and seconded to approve the Placer Ranch Specific Plan and Sunset Area Plan Environmental Impact Report Contract Amendment with Ascent Environmental Incorporated. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstention? The item is moved. Thank you. Thank you. Now we'll move to our first department item, Health and Human Services, multi-year revenue agreement for the Drug Medi-Cal Organized Delivery System, State of California, Department of Health Care Services. Amy,
Hello again.
back.
I'm back, Amy Ellis with the Adult System of Care. So yes, today I have an action requested to adopt a resolution approving the intergovernment agreement with the State of California Department of Health Care Services for the Drug Medi-Cal Organized Delivery System initial revenue contract in the amount of $32,029,560, which will hopefully be in effect for October 1st, 2018 through June 30th, 2021, and authorize the Director of Health and Human Services to sign the agreement with Risk Management and County Council concurrence, and subsequent amendments not to exceed an additional $320,296, consistent with the agreement's subject matter and subject of work with Risk Management and County Council concurrence. So the Department of Health Care Services utilizes this intergovernmental agreement in order to obligate to Placer County the federal drug Medi-Cal and receive federal reimbursement for substance use treatment to Medi-Cal beneficiaries. This new contract is the next step towards the process of implementing a Placer County specific implementation plan to develop a drug Medi-Cal organized delivery system through the 1115 waiver and enhance and improve substance use services, with the anticipated go-live date of October 1st, 2018. The increased federal funds, which will be approximately $21.5 million over 3 years, will be utilized in contracts with community-based providers who will be delivering the required organized delivery system services that include residential, outpatient, intensive outpatient, case management, recovery services, and methadone maintenance services. An RFP for those services recently concluded, and those contracts will come before the board next month At that time, we plan to come to provide a more complete description of those available services, programs, and any available outcomes that we have in the substance use programs as asked for last month. So the reason I said if is that we still have not received this contract. I mean, we have drafts of it, but there's some changes at CMS at the federal level. So we will be getting you that finalized contract with county council concurrence, but this is so that if we can get that in the timing right, is so that we can in fact go live October 1. If they don't get those changes to us in time, then it could delay implementation, and we'll come back to your board at that time if that happens. But this hopefully will let us do this. The fiscal impact, this is a multi-year revenue contract. It's 100% funded with federal dollars. The fiscal year 18-19 amount is included in the department's final budget, and the residual amounts will be included in the fiscal year 19-20 department's requested budget. This contract requires no county general fund contribution. Any questions?
Supervisor Duran, do you have questions?
Yeah, I don't have a problem kind of giving you a gap filler for this agreement, but I would appreciate you coming back to the board if there are any substantive changes that are outside the norm for our consideration. And I'll leave that decision up to county council as to what is substantive or not.
And those would have to flow down into the county provider contracts that will be coming before the board, so I could highlight those changes at that time.
Only if they're substantive. If it's just housekeeping stuff, I don't care about that.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, any other board member comments? Seeing none, anyone in the audience wish to address the board on this item? Anybody in Tahoe? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board for action. It's been moved and seconded to approve item 7A, multi-year revenue agreement for the drug Medi-Cal organized delivery system. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none. Thank you, Ms. Ellis.
Thank you.
Now we'll move to department item 8, Public Works and Facilities Tree Mortality Removal Project Amendment with Mountain G Enterprises Incorporated. And Ms. Atherton? Yes.
Engineer in the Department of Public Works and Facilities, and I'm working as a project manager on the tree mortality removal project. And I'm here to speak with you this morning about the amendment number 1 to our PSA number 000974 with our consultant, Mountain G Enterprises, also known as MGE. So just a little background on the tree mortality and how it relates to the county. The county declared a state of emergency on December 8th of 2015, and you'll notice on every board agenda we renew that emergency, and that keeps us in that state so we can do this project. The board approved the hazardous tree removal plan in September of 16, and they approved an updated plan in October of 16. The Placer County Tree Mortality Task Force, we hold interagency, interdepartment monthly coordination meetings, and we also attend the state meetings monthly. The Department of Public Works and the Facilities were tasked with the mitigation of trees, and this is an important one, that are a threat to the county's infrastructure. So there's a lot of tree mortality throughout the county, but this grant program is only for the ones that impact infrastructure, mainly our roads, a lot of our parking lots or buildings. Our consultant selection was through our procurement department, and it resulted in executing a contract with Mountain G, MGE, and that was in September of last year. I want to note that when we went into contract with them, we estimated our tree mortality at 1,834 trees, and since then we've estimated 10,500. So it's over 6 times. So that's where this amendment to the contract comes in, is the additional level of effort required on the project. I'm gonna, okay, well, that's what I said. So this is, I apologize, kind of boring. This is a contract task list. I'll try to get through it quickly, but basically we're supplementing funds for project management, additional windshield survey, and what that is, and that's how we have identified the trees. We don't have access to the property. So we have 1,063 center lane miles of roads in Placer County that are county maintained. and that's another key component, and not lane miles, but center line miles. And so the consultant would say, hey, there's a tree, they click on the GIS, we want to get on that property. And that leads to the other items where we do the GIS data collection, mapping, and coordination. And then we have to get a right of entry form signed by the property owner to get on the actual property and mark the trees for their removal. We have processed thousands of right of entry forms so far to date. And then we've also created a section determination for the county and basically structure the removal of the trees. The consultant also helps in bid package preparation, pre-construction assistance. We have mandatory in-field meetings with the contractors before they'll bid. And then we have construction activities. The consultant helps during and after they verify the tree removal, document it with pictures, and then we use that information to submit for reimbursement through for our grants. We also left the item on for procuring wood storage sites. That's not something we're doing right now, but may be needed in the future. We do lots of coordination, PG&E, BLM, U.S. Forest Service, others, BOR, state parks, CAL FIRE. There's lots of coordination. And then environmental compliance. So they have a biologist on staff. We're processing even CEQA. There is requirements, even though it's exempt. And then NEPA when we get on the federal lands. I got to click on time, I think. Sorry. The original PSA was for a little over $1 million. The amendments for $755,000 and some change for a total of $761,890. The grant that we have is a reimbursement grant for 75% of eligible costs. The county does get a 7.5% reimbursement for administration costs on the 75%, so that's 7.5%. Doesn't really cover our costs. I'll get into that a little bit, but 82.5% is what we're looking at. We have a 2-year contract that we'd like to extend this for through this amendment, and want to mention that the dead and dying tree mitigation is a multi-year. It's going to continue for a while as trees continue to die due to the drought. So the important thing, the whole tree removal project as a whole, I want to break it out because it comes down to money a lot of times. We have consultant work where we identify the trees and do all those tasks, and then we also have construction work of the actual tree removal. And we do have a qualified list of contractors on board, and those costs are eligible. And then we have reimbursement for 75% of both of those items. We have a match, the 25% match money we call it in this grant, but only up to just shy of $364,000. So we can do 100% reimbursement for $1.456 million. After that, we're running at a 75% reimbursement for the county's work, unless CAL FIRE comes up with other funds that we will apply for. And we'll just wait and see. So again, more 10% back. Ineligible costs are county staff regular time, so we can't bill our time, and we're not cheap. And then any trees that don't impact the county infrastructure are not covered in this grant. So a lot of people have dying trees on their property, and unfortunately we can't address them with this, cannot. Let's see. So we've already started removing trees. We have 2 bid packages that went out, and they're in the Forest Hill area. The first bid package they've already completed. They removed 138 trees. The contractor's on vacation this week, and they'll be back next week, and they'll remove another 124. The average cost per tree for construction costs was $620 per tree. And the next packages that are coming up for bid packages are, we call it Division 6 and 7, and that has 268 trees. That's along the I-80 corridor, but not I-80 because that's Caltrans. But basically running up the I-80 corridor from Eminent Gap northeast to Soda Springs. Excuse me. And then we'll go toward the Tahoe area, kind of the band around the lake. We have 1,600 identified trees on private property that are not Forest Service and BLM land, so we would like to address those trees following the other division. And then we have other groupings of trees. We have 3,000 identified trees on Forest Service land, 1,250 trees on BLM land. So we have lots of bigger packages that will be coming, and I think we'll get economy of scale on price per tree in those packages as we move forward. So again, we anticipate we'll get 100% removal on forest and any property owned by the county, and then we're getting about a 45 to 50% return rate on the right of entry forms on private properties, which is standard for all the 10 counties that have declared the emergency in the state. So we're looking at about 7,000 trees that we'd like to remove by September of 2019. And again, it's ongoing. So we've made great progress to date, and a lot of the non-glamorous work has been done up till this point, and but now we're going to focus on getting these bid packages out. So we still need the consultant on board, but we're going to need additional monies for the packages. I want to note that for anyone listening, we can only do, again, the infrastructure trees. The Resource Conservation District and Fire Safe Councils, Elisa Noble and Luana Dowling, they've been putting together tree removal packages for private landowners and for those who are in the Fire Safe Councils. And if anyone's listening, they can find information on our website. And that is definitely a concern for a lot of people. And so that's the other component at the county that are addressing the dead and dying trees. So you'll recall we have a budget authority for $3.1 million. It's through our OES department. We're coordinating Public Works and OES. And I'm thinking mid-year we're probably going to come back just to, spoiler alert, we're probably going to ask for a couple more $1 million. And then it would still be under the 75% reimbursement. It hasn't been, there's not a cap on the amount yet, and there's not an expiration date on that grant yet. So that's kind of as we're moving forward. And I wanted to mention too, on a state level, I don't know if you guys have heard, but the Tree Mortality Task Force is kind of now a subgroup of the Forest Management Task Force, excuse me. And so we're waiting to see how the state is going to make those changes and implement the changes. And I believe that what it's going to do is open up opportunities for additional funding, like through air quality, and there's lots of opportunity there. So we're waiting to see, and I'd like to come back with an update. But we may need to restructure how we do the group within the county and maybe assign people to our forest management efforts as well. So I just want to throw that out there. It's too bad Jennifer's not here. Excuse me, Supervisor Montgomery. She's been at the state meetings as well.
Right.
Do you have any questions?
Oh, I see some lights. Supervisor Wygant.
Could you tell me again what the cost per tree was?
So in the two bid packages, the average was $620 per tree, and that's just construction costs.
And do you have a cost per acre of treatment?
We can't do it that way because it's like linear up roads kind of thing.
Yeah, thanks. And then as it relates to reporting back on the discussions at the state level, if you know now or if you hear as we go forward, is there just a focus by the state on this issue being drought related, or is there actual acknowledgement that in fact forest health is a function of not treating forest for maybe 100 years and actually recognizing the extent to which that is causing extreme fire hazard throughout the Sierra?
Absolutely, and that's it's a huge topic, and I was told I had 5 minutes, but you're so on board, and that's where we're going. We've mismanaged our forests for 100 years, maybe more like 150 years, and 100 years ago, the western slopes of the Sierra were designated open grazing. It doesn't look like that anymore. The natural native peoples going back 10,000 years would do controlled burns in the spring and the fall. We don't do that. Now we're understanding that fire is a component of forest health. We have very unhealthy forests. They're overgrown. We have huge amounts of fuel buildup in the forest. And then with the drought, if rain does come, it can't get to the forest floor with the material there. And then you have multiple trees fighting over that one raindrop that fell. Yeah. The soil health itself is deteriorated. The plants underneath that grow, the whole balance has been destroyed, so there aren't food for the animals down there. If you see old pictures and look back, you'll see forests that are patchy, and then you have some big trees, and maybe there's some condensed area here. That's normal. That's healthy. When you see pictures of our areas and it's just full trees, that's scary. That's like the scary picture. But there was a report called the Little Hoover Report that was done, and they're finally looking at it like, what can we do? We have a big problem, and they have some solutions for what we need to do to get our forest back to healthy. It's going to take a while, and it's going to take a lot of effort, but at least now they're looking at, there's mechanically removing the material, maybe using it for biomass and clearing. There's the low control burns, because really highly frequent fires every 2 to 4 years, but low intensity is the healthy stuff. These infernos, they've never existed through time. CAL FIRE tells me I could do a 100-foot fire break off the road, but it's going to hop over. There's no point in it, and they're just really unhealthy. We're not getting the diversity of species of trees as well. It's the whole thing, but they're finally looking at it, which is really good at the state level. CARB, California Air Resource Board's right up there on the table with them. The Regional Water Quality Control Board, BLM, everybody's there, and they want to do some big changes.
Well, so it's just a political editorial on my part for what it's worth, but a question as we go forward. I think there's been reticence by the state leadership as a generalization to actually stick our teeth into trying to resolve the problem statewide, and so I'll be anxious as we go forward to see if there's a real change in putting some genuine funding behind that issue. Thanks.
The rural county representatives in California are very interested in participating in this as well, because it's a very critical issue for all the members of the rural counties. Supervisor Euler.
So pleasantly surprised to hear that we've actually initiated tree removal. You say we've got 128 trees that have been removed at this point?
Yeah.
And when did that start?
Earlier this month. Yeah.
I was unaware that we'd actually started, but that's great.
Yeah.
Even though it was December 8th of 2015 that we originally declared our state of emergency in regard to trees. Only in government do we qualify almost 3 years as an emergency response to a problem. And we do it to ourselves. I mean, it's the layer upon layer, and you iterated a few of them. It's the layer upon layer through which we have to go, and I don't think that if I may tee off of Supervisor Wygant's editorial comments, I don't think that the vast majority of our constituents understand and appreciate the layers of regulatory control and burden placed on us as local service providers. It's not just the evil developers who have to comply with all these environmental regulations. It's those of us trying to provide emergency services like tree removal, which we get around to 3 years after we declare the emergency. Thank you.
Yeah, I think. So more coming, and I just so you know. So Public Works, I think that's why we brought in Public Works for the delivery of these types of this project, because I'm actually an engineer in road and bridge design. So, but we deliver projects, and so we're coming together with OES, and so yeah, we had the 2 bid packages that went out, and they were a pilot project to work out the kinks in it, because it's a very different project than any of the other types of projects we've done. But it's kind of like this. So
I understand, and that's the really frightening thing, is that we're actually probably the most responsive in terms of our ability to react to an emergency. We're actually, at this point, removing trees. I'm not sure that our state or federal partners are at that point yet.
Other counties are, but yeah, they're. Yeah. We're probably, like, if we were going to in a race, we're probably in 3rd place behind Tuolumne County and Fresno County. They jumped in really early, and they have way more dead trees than we do. But we're doing well. We are doing well.
So after the trees are cut, what happens to the logs?
Okay, so how do I say this? They become the responsibility of the contractor to dispose of in a legal manner off-site. Okay, so
Off-site?
Off-site, yeah. So they can't leave them on the, unless they're designated to be left, and that's what the property owner wanted, or they're in a riparian area where they can't be dragged out. Otherwise, they take them out. So you wanted the logs to go to the highest level of service. So if they can be sold for timber, that's great. And then the second level is like an animal wood chip product.
Yeah.
And then the third one would be like a biomass. And sometimes other efforts of tree removal, they'll pile them and burn them and that kind of thing. But that becomes, what the contractor is going to do. We're not really in the business of managing wood storage sites at this point. And so.
All right, thank you. Anyone in the audience wish to address this board, this item? Seeing none. Anybody in Tahoe? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board for approval. We've been asked to approve a tree mortality removal project amendment with Mountain G Enterprises Incorporated. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The item is moved. Thank you, Alice. It's a good presentation.
Thank you.
Now we'll move to B item, Kings Beach Western Approach Project Engineering and Environmental Consulting Services Agreement with Almy Mears Means LTD. Mr. LaPlante.
Good morning, Chairman Holmes, honorable members of the board. I'm Dan LaPlante, Associate Engineer of the Placer County Public Works and Facilities, here today to ask for you to grant your authority to the Director of Public Works and Facilities to enter into a contract 000990 with GHD Inc., which is formerly Omni Means, for the Kings Beach Western Approach project. The agreement is for preliminary engineering and environmental services, and the amount not to exceed $900,000, with a proposed contract contingency of $90,000. The Kings Beach Western Approach project is essentially a continuation of the Kings Beach Commercial Core project that we've been building over the last 12 years up in Kings Beach. It will extend both roadway and streetscape improvements to the west into the intersection of Highway 267, where Highway 267 and Highway 28 meet, a very critical point in the community. And the idea there is to build a proposed roundabout at that location, which would make the third roundabout as part of that area. This proposed improvement was looked at probably 10 years ago as part of the planning and design of the Kings Beach Commercial Core project. We looked at it in the environmental document project report on that project, and it was something that we looked at, but we decided to pull it back and wait till a later time, and so we did not move forward with that improvement at that time. So at this point, the Western Approach project is the next viable project in the area. It's an important project to continue to extend and improve the pedestrian and bicycle mobility, the improved aesthetics, and the improving the water quality that's entering Lake Tahoe. At this point, the initial meetings we've had with the agencies, with both Caltrans and the TRPA, Caltrans is undertaking a new intersection control and evaluation process, which we are going to be part of, and it's called the ICE screening process. And so right now, the meetings that we've had have all been fairly favorable to the proposed idea that we want to do, which is the roundabout. So at this point, we are moving down that road. We have secured some federal dollars to do that. So at this point, that is really our starting point for project design and environmental services with the community. Similar to the Kings Beach Commercial Core project, we'll probably have a slew of public meetings and bring all the different stakeholders to the table and hear from them as part of the project. Our department and our project team is anxious to move forward on this important project, and we did want to ask your board's consideration to grant the authority to the Director of Public Works and Facilities to execute the agreement with GHD in the amount of $900,000 with and to sign future amendments up to $90,000 with the concurrence of Caltrans, Risk Management, and County Council. And I'm available to answer any questions you may have in regards.
Any questions from board members? I see none. Anyone in the audience? I see none. Anybody in Tahoe wish to address the board on this? All right. We'll bring it back to the board for action.
And move approval. And I will say, I appreciate you not waiting us to do that PowerPoint. I'm not a big fan of PowerPoints over 7 pages. But I do appreciate the information.
Do I hear a second? Okay, there's been a motion and a second to approve the Kings Beach Western Approach Project Engineering and Environmental Consulting Services Agreement for Omni Means Ltd. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The item is moved. Thank you, Mr. LaPlante. Now we're going to go to item C, Agreement of Purchase and Sale, 3205 and 3225 North Lake Boulevard, Tahoe City, California, RT Nahas Company property. Ms. Lori Morse.
Good morning. I can still say that. There we go. Chair Holmes, members of the board, Lori Morse, property manager for the Department of Public Works and Facilities, here today to seek your board's approval of several recommendations. Let's see here. Seeking your board's approval of the agreement of purchase and sale for the acquisition of the Nahas property, which is located at 3205 and 3225 North Lake Boulevard in Tahoe City in the Dollar Hill area from the RT Nahas Company for $3.6 million. And to adopt a resolution authorizing the Director of Public Works and Facilities or designee to take all necessary actions to complete the acquisition and to add the property to the county's comprehensive capital assets listing following acquisition by the county, and to approve a budget revision shifting $200,000 in appropriations from the Lake Tahoe Tourism and Promotions Fund 145 in the amount specified in your report and up on the PowerPoint, and from the capital project number 704949 for the countywide planning project to create a new capital project number PJ00778, the Nahas property acquisition. A little over a month ago, your board directed staff to negotiate a purchase and sale agreement with the RT Nahas Company to provide for the acquisition of the Nahas property. And your board directed the director or his designee to come back to your board to seek approval of the resultant agreement of purchase and sale in substantial conformance with the material terms and subject to county council concurrence. This map we showed you at the July 24th meeting. You could see it's located in the Dollar Hill community. There are 2 parcels on the property that we're acquiring. It's immediately off State Route 28, 2 miles from Tahoe City, 6 miles from Kings Beach. It's accessed from Highway 28 off Fabian Road and bounded by Village Road. This is a closer up shot of the property aerial view. And like I mentioned, it's 3 parcels. It is on the Tahoe Truckee Regional Transit Route and is adjacent to east and westbound bus shelters. And it is immediately west of the 85-acre Firestone property, which was acquired by the county in 2016. The property is deed restricted for recreation and the Dollar Creek Shared Use Trail. There's a Class 1 trail on State Route 28 across from the property that provides access to Tahoe City, west to the West Shore and Squaw Valley. Goals for this acquisition would be in response to a regional need for local achievable housing and to create a mix of housing to serve a range of local housing needs and income levels. It provides land that could be developed and potentially address the need for achievable local housing as identified by the Mountain Housing Council. Achievable housing addresses both traditional affordable housing needs and the local resident professional workforce or the missing middle income ranges defined as households earning between 100 and 195% average median income. The NAHAS project provides excellent potential for a local achievable housing project. The property has a TRPA designated preferred affordable housing area. It's eligible for up to a 25% bonus units above the 15 units per acre that's currently allowed. And it was previously permitted in 2003 for a mixed-use housing project. Unfortunately, that project expired in 2009 during the economic downturn. The 2003 project had permitted 128 mixed-use senior affordable single-family residential and retail development with 78 affordable apartment units and 50 market-rate homes in 25 duplex units and 4,800 square feet of commercial. The property would also be very competitive for workforce affordable housing development tax credits due to its proximity to schools, the Tahoe City Town Center, access to quality fresh food, produce, dairy, and meat, the frequent transit service, and the trailhead and recreational opportunities nearby. The property has excellent development potential with the level site, Class 6 soils, providing the maximum allowable coverage of up to 30% land coverage or 3.4 acres. It's a former location of a service station and a retail building. Both buildings have since been demolished. And in 2006, the Houghton Regional Water Quality Control Board issued a no further action letter related to a former petroleum release at the site of the former service station. The site is zoned mixed-use Dollar Hill, allowing commercial, multifamily, and single-family development with a minor use permit. There's also significant bank development rights from TRPA and the Tahoe Truckee Sanitation Agency. Staff has been successful in negotiating an agreement being presented to your board today for execution. It provides for a purchase price of $3.6 million, provides for a property contingency period of 120 days in return for a $50,000 refundable deposit, which must be paid following execution of the agreement. Listed above is the contingencies that would be cleared through this phase, and that's the project feasibility, the appropriation of purchase funds, approval of current notices, studies, reports, commodities, and so forth, and the county's potential selection of a housing developer through its current request for proposal process. It's a potential that that selected developer would assume the purchase and sale agreement prior to close of escrow. After the initial 120-day phase, there would be an investigation period extension that we call the project approval contingency. We have three-month extensions that we have a $20,000 deposit to be paid prior to each extension. Those deposits become non-refundable, as well as the initial deposit that's made. If the county decides during this phase not to pursue the acquisition, then those deposits would be remitted to the seller. And in the event the county purchases the property, all deposits paid to date would be applied to the balance due. Apologize, I had a redundant slide. There it is again. But different on that is that there is, after we clear contingencies, there'd be a 30-day escrow period. And then following that, we would close escrow.
This item involves an initial budget revision for $200,000 that would go to the deposits I reviewed earlier, the $50,000 refundable initial deposit, the non-refundable investigation period deposit of up to $60,000, and facility staff, counsel, and consultant costs up to $90,000. There's a future budget revision envisioned should we proceed with the acquisition. To date, there has been $500,000 already committed by the Tahoe Truckee Airport District. That was approved last month by their board. There would be the use of an estimated $1 million of the transient occupancy tax fund balance, which was recommended by the North Lake Tahoe Resort Association. And staff would recommend $1,050,000 in housing trust funds that were collected from Tahoe Region projects. The CEO staff is also seeking $1 million in private donations from the Martis Fund. We wish to note that the Mountain Housing Council continues to be instrumental in identifying potential philanthropic and grant funding and demonstrates a broad-based support for this project. At this, I wish to hand over the remainder of the presentation to Jennifer Merchant, who will review the community outreach and our next steps. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura.
Mr. Chair, if you don't mind, I'll just do it from here.
Sure.
Okay, community outreach. I did want to talk about a couple opportunities we had to work with the community and talk about the opportunity. So on August 1st, we held a conversation with the community at the Tahoe City Public Utility District, had over 60 people attend the meeting and tracked over 300 comments from the meeting. 45 comment cards were submitted from folks. And I would like to talk with you a little bit about some of the themes that we heard from people, as well as share some pictures. Really, in addition to engaging the community and getting feedback from the community during this meeting, the purpose was to assemble a package that will be attached to the request for proposal that will be issued later this week, so that the developer is aware of any community concerns or desires as it relates to the property and the project specifically. So some of the main themes that we heard was a desire for local resident housing, so not making it available for rental for Airbnb. That's something that you'll hear from the community fairly often in general recently. Really focusing on housing for working professionals, but not discounting, non-professional. And that's really that achievable housing is getting from about moderate to above moderate housing, which is still a challenge regarding affordability. Also creating community space on the site and then making sure that there's a linkage between the Nahas property site which would be developed for housing, and then the county's adjacent site which is developed for recreation, specifically the bike trail. We had a station about design issues, so we heard a lot on that, including goals about laying out the site, as well as building design and housing type, whether it's single-family, residential, tiny homes, et cetera. We asked a lot of those questions. I would say that, and I, along with Shauna Doherty from the Mountain Housing Council, manned the concerns station. We had 4 stations set up, and we heard the greatest concern was related to traffic and ingress and egress into the neighborhood. We did hear some concerns at the meeting about the deed restriction, and you heard that at the meeting on the 24th. I did provide documentation on the deed restriction to everybody who attended the meeting, as well as a roundup of all of the feedback that we received. The property was deed restricted in January 2016 by the state of California when the county acquired it from the North Tahoe Public Utility District, consistent with the purposes of the grant allocation that was made to purchase the property in 1988. So it is deed restricted for that grant purpose for bike trail development. So here's one of the photos from the property. from the meeting. There were 4 stations. We had a presentation at the beginning to just root the folks at the meeting and, the need for housing and what we are talking about, why we are talking about purchasing this property. So the 4 stations included housing unit type and the kind of people who might live there, the income ranges, size of families, et cetera. We had a separate station on site layout and design considerations, another on on-site amenities that were desired, as well as other ideas, and then, as I mentioned earlier, the issues and concern. I did want to point out and thank the folks who participated. We had 1 county staff person at each station, but we also had some of our stakeholders and partners there. We had Cindy Gustafson from the Resort Association, Nikki Riley from Mountain Area Preservation, Heidi Allstedt from the Martis Fund, JT Chevalier from the Tahoe City Downtown Association. So we had a cross-section of our partners participating with us and supporting us at this meeting. This was the station on the unit type, so we allowed folks to take 3 dots and then vote for the different kinds of units that they favored. You can see on the ownership, well, you might not be able to see it. So let me point it out to you that there was a preference for kind of the traditional mountain home style, and they were interested, however, in us looking into multifamily, single or duplexes, but they liked the mountain home style better than some of the more modern things that you see there. So just kind of Tahoe style. And then we also talked about materials, that there was a lot of interest in scaling the project to fit the neighborhood so it blends in with the surrounding area. They were wanting to make sure that the materials were cost-effective and low maintenance in design so that people could afford to continue to maintain the property. And some people felt it was important to move the units back away from the highway so that there would be landscaping and buffer so that you didn't see some big, giant housing project as you're driving by, and also to separate it from the highway so that the people living there didn't have road noise. There's the community amenities station. Some of the amenities folks said that they thought would be good for the housing site was storage for the kind of equipment that people who live in Tahoe typically have, bike racks, skis, and all that sort of thing. We saw something similar actually when we were in Vail. I guess we collect junk or our outdoor recreation tools that we like to have in the Tahoe area. They had a preference for having a lot of common space, gathering, meetings, dining, courtyards, and that sort of thing, so that it felt like a real community, and also included maybe a community garden, potentially a pool. It was suggested. It's often suggested because it's something that is missing in the community right now, a playground. And then felt it was important to connect it to the adjacent parcel. I also did attend the August 9th NITRAC meeting and presented some of these results and got additional feedback from the NITRAC members. Each of them supported their support for your board moving forward with the acquisition and the analysis on developing a project there. They wanted to make sure that we weren't just focusing on the professional level, the high income range, and that we were also providing housing for people in a mix of affordability ranges. There was concern from one member on NITRAC who lives in the adjacent community, again, about traffic in the adjacent neighborhood. So I think that's probably the most common theme on the concern side. Then we're going to be continuing outreach to our neighborhood associations through the Mountain Housing Council, Tahoe City Downtown Association, Resort Association, and Chamber of Commerce. Our next steps, we're obviously recommending approval today. There will be the 120-day investigation period with the 3-month extensions. The RFP will be released either Friday or Tuesday, not 100% sure on that yet, but there will be an October deadline for submitting responses in proposal form. We are going to distribute that RFP to local housing stakeholders and affordable housing developers. So everybody can take a look at it. We'll have it posted on our website for the community to see. And then we will have some local residents on the panel. And then on the development side, we'll, of course, be going through CEQA, so there'll be plenty of opportunity for comment there. And if not enough, there's always TRPA. And then you've got some other opportunities for public comment listed there. Happy to answer any questions.
Supervisor Euler.
So the meeting that you held where you had the 4 stations and people were able to provide their input on design elements and things along those lines, it seems as though the purchase might have been presented as a foregone conclusion if you're talking about design elements. Were there people that were there that challenged the assumption and spoke to the issue of whether the county should move forward with the acquisition at all?
Nobody did challenge that, but that was presented that it had not occurred yet. That in fact, I mentioned that this meeting was forthcoming, and I have included that in my noticing to all the people who attended the meeting. We had over 60 emails. We sent it out to everybody and said, and they're going to consider the purchase and sale agreement at this meeting. We really felt like it was important to get a feel from the community about what it would look like should your board take that action.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Anyone here in Auburn have a comment? Anyone in Tahoe? Please come forward.
There you go.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, good morning.
Yeah, my name's Chris Eger, and I live here in Tahoe City. And I'd actually like to start with a question, which I believe would be for Jennifer. But a concern I have relates to how we ensure that. Is this still clear?
Yeah, you're good. Yeah.
Okay. How we ensure that any potential project on the site would meet the community needs and desires. So specifically, if we as a community thought that we need to set aside some of the housing on the site for local employees, whether they be of local businesses or maybe the transit agency, it seems to me that there's a lot of leeway in the RFP at this point. And so I just want to know how we can ensure that these needs and desires of the local community will be served with this project through the RFP process.
Do you have any other questions now?
No other questions at this point, but I probably have some comments following a response.
All right. Are you ready to?
Do you care for me to respond?
Please.
Sure. Happy to. So the RFP actually, I wish I had the title of it with me. It's entitled North Lake Tahoe Region Locals Housing Mixed Use Project. I think by the title itself, it indicates to anybody who might be responding to the RFP that we're looking for locals housing in the region. I think beyond that, because we have, we'll probably have 2 to 3 local residents, either from adjacent neighborhoods or elected officials on local boards participating in the selection committee. I think we have an opportunity to ensure that that the local community's voice is heard through that. It's likely that I'll also be sitting on that committee, and I'm a local resident in addition to being a county employee. Then beyond that, Placer County gets to approve the project as a potential initial property owner. We would be working and negotiating with the developer on any kind of deed restriction. It's very clear in the RFP that the housing is for local residents. I don't want to say only for local employees, however, because some people don't have jobs. They may be retired, they may have disabilities that keep them from having part-time or full-time employment. I think that the county is in the driver's seat in negotiating with the developer on what that project looks like. It very explicitly talks about that there would be some sort of restriction on renting it for short-term use. So it would not be an Airbnb type of facility. It would be making sure that people who are wanting to be residents in the community have a place to live within their means.
All right, good. Did you have some more comments, sir?
Yes. So there are a number of issues I see with this potential project at this stage. I'm going to try to keep these comments very brief, but one, I'd say that a single meeting with 60 participants, and mind you, I live here, I keep up to date with what's going on. I wasn't aware of this meeting. I'm not sure that that qualifies as being adequate with respect to community engagement. I also believe that the timing of the acquisition may be a bit premature given all the other work the county is doing and other agencies are doing with respect to zoning issues, changes there, regulatory policy and program changes which could affect the direction of housing development in the near future. I'm also concerned about this project potentially crowding out or precluding other development in the future, and really in two ways. One, financially, so if nearly all of the available funds to support housing in the area are depleted with this property acquisition, that could be problematic because funds wouldn't be left in the near future. But also, and I haven't heard any mention of this, the TRPA has a strict development allocation unit allotment, I guess we could say. And the number of units potentially being proposed here for this project would completely deplete the county's bank development allocation and potentially deplete up to 3 years more worth of all residential development allocations, which would limit future residential development of any sort, including vacation homes, private single-family homes, and multifamily housing. And I also want to go through some numbers really briefly. These all came from public documents from either the Mountain Housing Council, Placer County, or the Tahoe Truckee Community Foundation. But we have this 195% income figure that's been proposed by the Mountain Housing Council. And I'm really not sure that that's appropriate. So a couple quick points on that. That could include households in the top 20% of the income distribution. I'm not sure that that's the target audience for housing in the area. I'll also note that according to the numbers presented in these documents, the affordability gap for rental units primarily concerns lower income households below 100% of the AMI and larger size households at the AMI. So I think there's really kind of a narrower focus of the issue than may be implied. Anyway, these are some of my concerns at this point. I'm glad we're working to address the housing issue. I really hope we can do something that serves this community's interests. Thank you.
We need your name, sir.
Oh, yes, Chris Egger from Tahoe City, Egger.
Thank you. Any other comments from Tahoe area? I don't see anybody already. Any comments from board members? Then I'll entertain a motion.
Move approval, staff recommendation.
Okay, it's moved and seconded to approve item 8C, agreement of purchase or in sale 3205 and 3225 North Lake Boulevard, Tahoe City, California. RT Nahas Company property. This is a budget revision, so will require a roll call vote.
Duran? Wygant?
Yes.
Euler? Holmes?
Yes, thank you. The item is complete. Thank you, and thank you. Thank you, Lori. Now we'll move to closed session. County Council, will you take us into closed session, please?
Before we move to closed session, one point of clarification, Mr. Chair. You had pulled item 17A
Yeah.
off of consent. Was it? I noticed that there are HR representatives here. Was it your intent to gain further information today, or to simply pull this off the agenda period?
So pull off the agenda so I can review it later on, not today.
Great. Thank you
Okay.
very much.
Thank you. I wonder what they were here
The
for.
board will now adjourn to closed session to consider 3 items of existing litigation which are identified on the agenda.
Okay. The board has returned from closed session, and we'll hear a report from County Council.
The board met in closed session to consider 3 existing litigation items. The first 2, High Sierra Rural Alliance and Sierra Watch, status report only, no action taken. The third, the Parkford owners, the board provided direction to offer defense to the named county official, and that concludes closed session report.
And that concludes the business for the board today.